Cortez Masto. Senator Inhofe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The reason you're experiencing some redundance in questions that are coming is that we have about 50% of the members of this committee are also on the committee called the Environment and Public Works Committee. And so we find ourselves having to go back and forth, and it's very difficult. The question that was asked, and Mr. Clark, let me first of all say how much we enjoy you as citizens of my city of Tulsa. I've been in your operation many times, and it's a great benefit to us, and I appreciate your presence and all the contributions you've made to our local communities very much. When you were asked by Senator Wicker, some things I think are kind of interesting. That is, where are we? Now, it was a difficult question to answer. He only asked you, not the rest of you, but the rest of you, you know, there's an assumption by the American people that we're always number one. We're always the first there. And I know I served as ranking member of the Senate Armed Services Committee. We know that there are many countries out there that are developing missile technology and other things that we're really not always number one. But in this is something that's new. And I'd kind of like to know if it's, I think it's appropriate to ask each one of you, kind of where are we right now in terms of other countries? We've heard Germany, Japan, China, other countries that are advancing. Where are we in the mix right now? You've already answered that, Mr. Clark, but some of the rest of you.
When it comes to fatalities, we're trailing. The rest of the industrialized countries have made more progress in the last 2 decades.
No, I'm talking about this technology that's the subject of this meeting today, where we are.
So the other countries have made more progress, and some of that is because they have embraced technology. So things like automatic emergency braking, not required here on trucks. Looking at that in Europe. So they have that in Europe. When we look at automated enforcement, again, other countries are embracing some of these technologies at a more rapid clip than the United States.
Yeah, anybody else, any thoughts on that? That explains the European end, but anything else? I'd like to know, because we get asked these questions. Well, what are the other countries doing? You know?
Well, we do benchmark, Senator, with what our colleagues in Europe are doing. We think the proving grounds and the development at the local and state level here in the United States is a bit more advanced. And I think that's in large part to the environment we're seeing multiple states and communities stepping up to really attract innovators to their state and cities. So I think smart cities were mentioned as well. We're creating those environments where technology can be tested in a safe way. That's a good thing. And I think those things, those investments are going to accelerate the adoption of the technology.
That's fine. I understand that. Now, when Senator Markey asked the question, it was kind of presumed that there's going to be this mass exodus of jobs in America. And so it was a difficult question for you just to answer yes or no to. So I guess I'd like to have a comment from each one of you, because I've heard from this committee that there are some arguments that we're actually going to be employing more people. We're getting into other technology. But how do you see us? And when this washes out, are we going to have the massive jobs declines that were kind of assumed in the question that was asked you? Would you comment to that?
I think I struggled just with that straightforward question, just because I start thinking about the number of lives that we've lost on our roadways and our highways, and how to reduce that, and then just that I'm not the subject matter expert on that key point, but primarily driven by our goal to get to zero and what that will look like. I will tell you from a law enforcement perspective, I've been involved for 30 years, like the Senator said, and every time we get more technology, it seems it definitely seems to take more people than less to manage those technology systems.
Yeah. Any other comments on that, Mr. Spear?
I would say that the type of job description that we're going to see in the next 20 years for drivers and technicians is arguably going to make these employees more marketable. They're going to be better skilled. They're going to be better trained. Employers are going to be investing a lot more in their capabilities to make certain that this equipment is up and running and done in a safe way. So We're already facing a shortage. The reason I answered no to that is because we simply don't believe that this is a displacement issue.
Yeah, yeah. Well, from your perspective, the last thing I wanted to ask is, do you believe that heavy trucks should be included in the drafting of the legislation?
Absolutely, Senator.
Okay, does anyone not believe that, want to speak out on that issue?
I don't believe that they should be part of this current legislation because, and I don't want to oversimplify this, but, you know, all the discussion has been about passenger vehicles, and I think we have to recognize that there is a vast difference between a 4,000-pound car and a 80,000-pound.
Yeah, you made that point, and I appreciate that very much. Do the other three of you somewhat agree with, mostly agree with Mr. Spear? Yeah, all right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Inhofe.
Thank you, Senator Carper. Senator Inhofe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, this is kind of interesting because there's so many areas here where we are in agreement. That isn't always true in this committee. Now, you folks are all experts in these areas, and of course, we're not up here, but we're going to be wanting to make decisions, wanting to make changes so that we can accomplish some of the goals that we're talking about. So, essentially, we're talking about three steps. First, the captured technology separates some CO2 from gases produced in electricity generation. Secondly, purified, compressed, and all of that. And finally, the CO2 is injected into the underground reservoir for use to other purposes. Now, as the chairman pointed out in his opening remarks, this does have great opportunities, and opportunities that you've talked about in your testimony, Mr. Greason. But there also, there's the problem of NRS. And I was chairman of this committee at the time that we went through this, and yes, it is ironic that that was set up in order to make things come out cleaner, and it didn't work out that way. Now, when you're looking at opportunities you have, we need to start talking about a legislative fix that we can do. We can do it maybe through NRS. We can do it a number of different ways. I know you outlined a few things, but have you gone into a lot of detail on this as to what we at this side of the table could do to resolve the problem that we're here meeting on today and to enhance our production?
Thank you, Senator. I did not go into detail in my testimony. We can certainly provide more
I think
detail.
you referred to your written testimony. Did you get more detail there?
There's a little more detail there, talking about the steps that could be taken to make the NSR process less of a deterrent to a major capital improvement in environmental performance, yes.
All right. Now, you had several operations. You only used this in one area. And what was the reason for that? Why were you able to face the risks that were posed by NSR in that one area and not the rest of some of your other operations?
So the design of this carbon capture system, it only touches the host coal unit right before the exhaust stream goes up the chimney. And so because of that, the carbon capture system itself was not considered an addition to the host coal unit. It's a separate, it has its separate air permit for the carbon capture system. So in that way, we did not have to face NSR on the host coal unit.
I see. All right. Well, you know, in my state of Oklahoma, we're doing this right now. It's Chaparral, and I've been to their operations. One's in the northeastern part of the state and one in the northwestern part of the state. And I see this as have you ever thought about what kind of a figure would we be looking at if we resolve that problem and we're able to utilize this enhanced system?
So every project and every plant is different. I can tell you for our project that we probably could have spent $50 million less if we'd been able to take steam from the host coal unit.
Yeah, that's interesting. How are things in Houston right now?
Drying out.
Yeah, well, that's good. That's good.
Drying out. We're getting there.
Mr. Fry, we're interested in doing the same things that you have been doing, and do you have any specific advice for us to accomplish the successes that you have achieved in Wyoming?
I'd suggest that if you all have opportunities to find CO2 sources and places to inject it, whether it be EOR or saline, start planning now. Look at where you could route pipelines with the minimal amount of constraints. And I realize that you have a different federal land status than we do here in Wyoming, but I think you'd follow those same steps to plan ahead and make your process a lot easier.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.